Want to welcome our guest today, John Campbell. John Campbell is a Harness Racing Hall of Fame inductee in 1991. He's won 29 Breeders' Crown Championships himself, 17 Triple Crown events, including 6 Hambletonians. 45 years in the racing game, over 10,000 wins, and just shy of $300,000 million in purses. Quite an accomplishment. John was the original or one of the youngest to get into what's called catch drivers, which means that instead of just driving and training and driving your own horse, he was hired by other trainers to drive their horses when that became fashionable. Now almost everyone is doing it. Some people call him the greatest reinsman of all his era, and at this particular junction, he's the best that ever was. He's president and CEO of the Hambletonian Society. So with that modest introduction, John, I want to thank you for being on our very simple, modest show.
Well, thank you, Doc. It's my pleasure to be here.
The greatest standardbred race of the year comes up this coming weekend at the Meadowlands. It involves standardbreds, obviously, and it's the Breeders' Crown, the equivalent of, some people know, the Breeders' Cup for the thoroughbreds. This is a standardbred version. The best standardbred horses in the world are coming in, and just for the sake of the audience, so that there's no confusion, there's 2 types of standardbreds. There's a pacer and a trotter. Would you please just tell me quickly or briefly what the difference is between a pacer and a trotter?
Well, a trotter is a diagonally gated horse, and if you see just a riding horse trotting along, that's what our horses do, only a lot faster. Pacers their front and hind legs move in unison, and they usually have hobbles on them to keep them on stride. So it's like a side gated. Pacers usually go faster than trotters at the top level, but that's the difference in the two, and they're totally separate, and they don't race against each other.
And are they naturally, I think by the different breeds and the family lines, which hopefully we can discuss in another version, there are particular stallions and mares that are known to throw trotters, and the same thing for pacers, although there's been a little bit of discussion of the interbreeding of some of these in the past.
There's a minor amount of crossover from pacers to trotters. There's actually a horse that was a pacing bred that sire trotters here in the United States has gone to Sweden. He's very popular, but it's very unusual for that. They're usually bred to pace and bred to trot.
The standardbred started in the U.S. in 1879 as a registry. The horses that were qualifying had to race 1 mile in under 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And it's interesting because contrary to the thoroughbreds, which they race at different distances, every race that you race is at the same standard mile, and that it's based upon who finishes first, but time. And the time of when they finish is critical to the success and to the future breeding rights of some of these horses.
Yeah, personally, I think we kind of missed the boat on distance racing. I think we should have continued on. We had more distance racing back in the 60s and 70s, and it just kind of gravitated to everybody wanted to go a mile, and that's what we train for now. That's what we breed for, and our bettors and fans are accustomed to everything at the mile. But I wish we had a little more diversity and distance in our game.
Well, that's good to hear. The future is yet to be written, and you could be one of the first, like you were with catch driving, to say, let's mix it up and have a shorter distance race and a longer distance race and just see what ends up happening, whether people are interested or not interested, because stamina has a lot to do with this.
It does, and I think it would be better for the breed if we were more concerned with stamina. But it's been tried, and it just hasn't gained traction the way that I would hope.
Coming up on October 29th in the evening, 6:15 p.m., the Meadowlands racetrack is the 2-year-old finals. That's a Friday night, and all the younger horses, the 2-year-olds, are racing that night. And then coming up the very next afternoon, Saturday, the 3-year-old finals, and that's 3-year-olds and up. And there's even 4, 5, 6-year-olds that race up into the open division. Is that correct? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, the 2-year-olds are separated by gait and gender, and then we have 4 of those on Friday night. And the 3-year-olds are separated by gait and gender, and then we have the open that are separated by gait and gender as well. So there'll be 8 Breeders' Crown Championships on Saturday afternoon.
Is there any way that the audience can watch via television or via live computer coverage, web coverage, whatever?
Yes, on Friday night, the Meadowlands will be on Facebook Live, as well as you can tune into the Hambletonian Society's uh, Facebook page and follow them there, and that'll be both days. On Saturday afternoon, we will be on FS1 with 9 of our races, and 6 of those will be Breeders' Crown races from between 1 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon Saturday. So there's be plenty of opportunities for the public to view all of these races.
And I guess if anyone's in the New Jersey area, is there admission based on the post-COVID type of situation? Is it limited? Is it open? What's the admission policy?
It's open. Obviously in New Jersey, if you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask. But it's open. There's no admission. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's hard to get people back into the swing of attending live events. But we were very happy with our Hambletonian crowd, and we're hoping for the same thing on Breeders' Crown on Saturday afternoon.
I understand that the post position, most people are aware that are heavy in the game, but others aren't, that you have eliminations, and it's amazing how much more sturdy the Standardbred is to the Thoroughbred. In the old days, they used to have meets and eliminations within the same day. Now they stretch it out for a week, whereas a Thoroughbred after a major race probably needs about a month or two to easily rebound. It also is important where they finish in the eliminations because it determines post position. How do they determine post position? What do you have to tell us about that?
Well, post position is very important. Certainly, the inside 5 or 6 posts give the drivers many more options than if you have an outside post, and you won't have to use your horse near as hard in the first part of the race to get a spot where you can have them in position when you turn for home. So post position is very important. We had elimination races last weekend on Friday and Saturday, and it's an open draw for the eliminations. And the horses that qualify, the horses that win their eliminations, they're entitled to draw between 1 through 5. So that's a big advantage. And it keeps the elimination races more competitive rather than people just going through the motion to make sure they get their horse into the final. But Standardbreds do race more often than the Thoroughbreds, and the week apart, that doesn't bother them. They can bounce back with that week off without any problems at all. As I've always said, we go 10 across, and we'll have one race with 11, which will have a trailer. But I've always said about the starting point, it's just a starting point. It's up to the driver, if you have a bad post, to do his best to get that horse in a position where if he delivers his best from the head of the stretch, that horse will have a chance to win.
Okay, now I know this year you're particularly proud of the fact that you have a number of trainers, drivers that are shipping horses in for these big races, and some of them internationally. So you want to just expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah, that's something that I'm really excited about. In both industries, the Thoroughbred and Standardbred, a lot of people think that the big stables dominate and a little guy doesn't have a chance. And to some extent that can be true. But this year we've got a real diversity geographically for our horses, and horses that have a really good chance. We've got one lady in Kentucky that trains one horse that won his elimination in the 3-year-old trot and looked extremely impressive. We've got horses from Ohio, Indiana, Ontario, and all of these connections were fortunate enough to have their horses make the final. So it's to some of these people, it's a dream come true to get in the Breeders' Crown, and you always root for the little guy to at least get in the big dance, because it's very difficult to compete against some of these bigger stables, and that's just the way it is. So that's something I'm and we at the Hambletonian Society are very proud of, that we've got a real diverse group of trainers and a real diverse group from a geographical standpoint. And I should point out, we've got one of the top horses from Europe that came over to the U.S. and specifically to point for the Breeders' Crown and won his first start in Lexington, and he'll be the favorite in the open trot. So it's an international event coming up.
What's the name of that horse?
Equerry D is his name, okay. And he will be favorite. But he's taking on the best that we have here in North America for the open trotters, so his task won't be easy, but I'm sure he'll be favorite.
You know, something that interested me in the eliminations, I saw where this trainer, and I apologize, I'll probably mispronounce his name, Ike Svenstad, he pulled the shoes of his horse, Ambassador Hanover, and he's claiming he's going to pull all the horse's shoes that he's got into the races. That's an interesting slant back to the original no shoe concept. Do you have any comments about that?
Yes, that's something that's become very popular. It was popular in Europe. It has been for a number of years. And Aki Svensson, he come over from Sweden. He was a top trainer over there, and he's quickly established himself as one of the top trainers here. And that's something he does on a regular basis. He has to have a good racetrack to be able to pull the shoes. If it rains and the track gets too hard, it'll actually be a detriment. But as long as the weather's good and the track has the cushion that it did last week, I'm sure you'll see not only Aki, but a number of the trainers pull their shoes on the trotters. It doesn't work near as well for pacers, but the trotters, they just seem to travel more efficiently, and they less chance of interfering when they're going, which means they hit touching another leg when they're traveling at that high speed. So I expect if the weather's good, there'll be many of the trotters that race without shoes.
Well, I don't need you to go into an entire discussion of every horse racing, although I know you would be able to do that. My audience can tune in and listen to the commentation race by race, but are there any one or two races or horses in particular that even you are excited about following and seeing how they do?
Well, I'm more excited about a couple of matchups that are coming up in the 3-year-old colt trot. As you mentioned, Ambassador Hanover really was impressive. He did pull the shoes, and he was extremely strong and impressive in his race. And in the other division, there was two horses in there. Quattro du Julio won the race. He upset the favorite Juju B. So I think the three of those horses, when they get together next week, it's going to be very interesting. And I would give any one of those three a really good chance of winning the race. I think it just kind of depends how the race is set up and how the driver's strategy plays out. And in the 3-year-old colt pacers, we have a horse colt from Ohio called Charlie May, who won his elimination. And he's going against Perfect Sting, who was the champion 2-year-old last year. Both of them were very impressive in their elimination. So I'm looking forward to those matchups. I think those will be very exciting races. And a lot of it's going to come down to driver strategy and who's going to be successful.
Well, I have one other question. It's a little bit loaded because I'm hoping to interview Tim Tetrick prior to the Breeders' Crown, but he's driving Lionel Sentinel, who came in a third in the elimination, driving this mare that is the top pacer in the country and maybe the top horse, depending upon who's making the decisions. But what's your summation of his third and his mare's potential for winning the pace? I guess it's the open pace.
Well, Lion Sentinel was on a lengthy winning streak and certainly established her as the top mare in the open mare division and one of the top horses in North America. She's been number one in our polls for at least 6 weeks, I believe. She didn't race as well the other day, but the competition kind of stepped up just the way the race shook out. Rocklamation, who has been knocking on the door, got a really good trip, and Lion Sentinel just was not able to run her down. I expect Lion Sentinel to bounce back with a really good effort, and I expect her to be favorite again. These horses just can't be at their top every start. It just doesn't work that way. But I expect her to bounce back with a really good level. But she'll have to be at her best to beat Rocklamation the way she looked the other day in the elimination.
Well, John, I'd love to go down the entire list with you and go through this, but that would take us probably a good hour. And I think we'll leave that to the experts, and the crowd can tune in and hear race by race. And there might be changes between now and the weekend anyway with some of the horses. But I want to thank you so much for helping to give us a little bit of insight into this important weekend of racing at the Meadowlands. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks very much for having me, Doc, and I'd be happy to come back.